Get out the insurance cards, get out the co-pays. The office is open, my friends. Brought to you by drroto.com.
So let's get to it.
Bring the pain!
What's up, everybody? It's Heat Override, and I'm ready to bring the pain for you and Dr. Roto this week. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, I actually had to go live twice. This is another hard hits review as we look to yesterday's UFC Seattle card, which turned out to be a banger, lots of finishes, which is crazy because that actually helped out a lot of things. I know that I previously just went live, so a lot of people that are watching this live or maybe watching it again, that is because I had an unhooked sound cord, so that made everything distorted, and I could not go through with a product like that. So while we get the right people to delete all that, I'm going to get back to it where people could actually hear me. What's up, Ken Vic? How you doing today? Oh, yeah, we already got the pros and the Joe coming in here. It's our guy D1 Prime, ready to bring the pain. But I'm ready to talk some UFC. Hopefully you watched the event yesterday as well too, Ken Vic. And so we're going to review that at the end. I'm going to talk about why hedging is important, why round robining is important, and why DFS and betting work as a tag team. And that is because, and that will all be explained at the end. But first, if you haven't been over to Dr. Roto, you get to Dr. Roto, use code word baseball, you will get 25% off of your subscription right now. That means 25% off to all of the great content that you could have won money with for the past week. Also, we have a partnership with DFS Hero. DFS Hero, code word doc, get you 20% off of that subscription, and you can use that optimizer to win you a lot of money. I have used DFS Hero's optimizer to not only compare to my lineups in the same contest, but also win money on NASCAR as well too. So it's been in tune. I like it. As a matter of fact, a couple weeks ago, I switched up a DFS lineup for a golf lineup, and my lineup was 1 point less. So, you know, it kind of shows where sometimes computers can be around us. They can be better than us, or sometimes we could just be nuclear and way better than them. Man, but I am ready for it. So this is a live show as everybody gets to it and gets in here. So we have questions, answers, and everything. But hey, let's get to the beginning. Let's talk about the fight breakdown. First fight that I covered was Alexia Dayanara versus Bruna Brazil. That fight turned out perfect for me DFS-wise. I picked Dayanara, one of the very few picks that I got right on this one. Well, I at least got 6. And I used Bruna Brazil everywhere. 3% in the DFS slate. That was fire. Next fight was Ricky Simon versus Adrian Yanez. And that fight, of course, ended up being a draw. This is one of those things where if you feel that a fight may go a draw, or a few fights may go a draw, which is very rare, that's why it's a plus 5,000, throw a dime on it. A dime will still win you $5. So if you would have did that call yesterday, you would have got that plus 5,000. Of course, we got some 4-digit wins that we had over the weekend. So that's it. As everybody gets in here, this is live. We're doing the fight breakdown right now. So let's move along. Navajo Sterling finally gets his first finish in the UFC by knocking out Bruno Lopez. And man, did it feel good. Of course, I had first and second round action on that along with knockout. And it was only time. Lopez stood in there, though. He did really well, pacing, moving, but it showed that Sterling is in this for good. Like, he is locked in, because he was locked in. He was slow, methodical, took his shots, finished Lopez. Casey O'Neill versus Gabriela Fernandez. Fernandez, man, I don't know, man. She ended up getting it. This was another one of those fights that kind of got out of hand. Of course, O'Neill was huge on the DFS slates, 40%. I'll bring that up later because we will cover the bets and DFS numbers like we did. And Fernandez, I picked her. I got positive number on Fernandez in right before the actual match and leading up to it. She was about negative 110 earlier in the week. So, you know, that just was a bad pick for me. I read it wrong. I underestimated Casey O'Neill, and Fernandez went down. But she looked good, though. She did look good. Marcin Tibura versus Tyrell Fortune. Fortune looked great. Was looking for a finish from him. Still did knock out points with him. And again, when we get to the end of this podcast, we talk about hedging. I will tell you why. Fights like this and coming up that are better. That's why you take knockout and points. So I was able to return money on that fight and get another win. Now, Chase Hooper getting smoked by Lance Gibson Jr. Lance Gibson Jr. was 10% owned on the DFS slates, made it a huge, 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 huge difference because nobody was really picking him. I picked Chase Hooper, but on the DFS slates, I took a chance with Lance Gibson. That's why sometimes not the best picking cards, which is why I'm going to use my 6-6-1 as a stepping stone to show why round robining and hedging makes the UFC betting and DFS unique. Going forward, we had Bahamundes versus Musayev. All right. Now, Bahamundes was the only loss for the 5-tastic picks, or not the 5-tastic picks. And he was the only loss for the Parlay of Pain last week. Now, that being said, he did have the finish. He had an early second round finish right from the go until Musayev grabs the cage because he got up, and it looked like that Bahamundes was going to get ground and pound finish. But Musayev got up. Bahamundes, instead of continuing striking or turning him around, decides to suplex him. And that's when Musayev grabs the cage, and then that ends up leading to bad position for Bahamundes, leading to Musayev getting on top of Bahamundes and a headbutt down low when he dropped on top of him. Could have been the reason why Bahamundes was split wide open bad in that match, because it was definitely on the top of his head. He was leaking all over the place immediately. So that being said, that's one of the biggest keys in that fight, because that turned the fight. That lost the pick for me. But what it did do was work out well for us on the, against us in the DFS region. Unfortunately, I only had Bahamundes on like 1 or 2 lineups. Terrence McKinney, of course, smokes Kyle Nelson. Now, I had the plus 60 seconds, under 60 seconds, gone in 60 seconds is what FanDuel calls it. And I loved it. But I also used this bet one more time in this card. But everybody knew Terrence McKinney was going to come out here. I mean, Kyle Nelson wanted no part of that smoke. Kyle Nelson just got backed up, was like, hey, and then gets hit with a kick and just gets waxed. Man, so that was a great win. And then we get to the next one. Mansour Abdul Malik getting knocked out by Yusuri Belgaria. Dude, Yusuri looked good. And so did Abdul Malik. This looked like this was going to be a good match. But unfortunately, the striking of Abdul Malik was exposed. And then that led to, of course, the finish Belgaria. I just keep messing that up. We're not going to worry about that name today, right? But I had him on one of my DFS lineups on FanDuel. So therefore, I didn't truly trust in Abdul Malik. And that's where sometimes hedging or making 2 different DFS lineups works out. And we'll get to that. We'll talk a little about it. A little educational series at the end of the podcast, because I've kind of been doing that since NFL's been done to kind of fill the podcast. But since I already went live, we're going to make sure this one gets done. So, Michael Chiesa, of course, 62 seconds. I played gone in 60 seconds plus 1490, but he smokes Nico Price, which was Dan's soup can of the week. So Dan's soup can of the week hits again. But man, at this point, I'm 6-4-1. Everything's looking good. But we got a huge sub. I had sub first and second round for Chiesa at plus 130. That was part of the Parlay of Pain. That worked out for us. And Nico Price, I mean, I just like 2 seconds. I saw that and locked it in. I was like, lock it in faster. We're getting close to over 60 seconds. I still got the first round action. I still got the first and second round action that I got. And that's practical. And I got the third round action. Third round to start was like, I think negative like 350. I put some money on it. Why not? Why not, people? I mean, it's free money at this point, right? Well, it became free money, but that's because that's what separates the fight theory that we use on the Fight Club of Pain from other shows. Because Dan and I do more than just dive into these fights. as a current point fighter and a point fighting champion, also Dan being an ex-boxer / wrestler, we are able to diagnose strengths versus weaknesses, and if these strikes and counter strikes can work. Dan did say that Pyfer was going to throw that overhand right. He did, and he eventually was able to catch and finish Adesanya in the main event. But again, if we did not hedge and we only thought one side of the fence is good, then you would have lost a lot of these fights and lost a lot of money on this card. And that's why we hedge. And I'll explain all of that coming up soon. Then we get the Alexa Grasso versus Macy Barber. Macy Barber looked great. It looked like this match was going to be going well. And then Barber gets hit with a shot from hell. And Grasso's nostalgia, Grasso's power, Grasso's mystique finally comes back by smoking Barber. Like, not only got smoked, Barber looked like she was dead. She was lying there motionless. And after she got smoked, she got wrapped up for a sub. A lot of people had the sub finish, which was crazy. I thought it wasn't crazy. I mean, plus 17. I think the sub was like plus 5,000 or something. But I mean, it was whatever. I got my knockout. We'll get to that. We'll talk about that while we hedge. And so we get back on it. But seeing that go down, of course, that became a loss. And I had Grasso on a DFS lineup. And not a lot of people used Grasso, but she was lower percentage zone. So that was really worked out. Of course, we get to the main event, Adesanya versus Pyfer. So like I said earlier, Pyfer knocked out Adesanya in the second round. And when we get over to the actual betting and DFS recap, that's when we'll start talking about that. So this fight card was really good. The Fight Club of Pain kind of took its licks. So let's get to the betting and DFS recap. So on the betting and DFS recap, as I said, I went 6-6-1. Worst week picking for me in a long time. We're going to talk about why we hedge. Let's get to it. So 6-6-1 overall picks. Me and Dan both went 0-3 for the Fight Club of Pain. After going a couple of weeks of unbeatens, we took all of our licks in one card. But let's get to it. The Parlay of Pain, because of Bahamunde's not being able to secure that second round finish, that led to the Parlay of Pain going 3-1-1. The tie, of course, being a void. And that was the first leg at Simon decision no bet, which was a plus 131. So for me, I was trying to make this juicy, trying to make this nice, trying to make this as nice of a Parlay of Pain as possible. It was a plus 34.27. We were that close to hitting it, people. So, fantastic picks. Crazy long shot. Parlay went 2-2-1. So, because it was a long shot, that was only Discord. That's why you got to get the Dr. Roto. Use code word baseball so you can become a rich friend. Get 25% off your subscription. Also, you want to follow Dr. Roto on YouTube and the X. Of course, like, follow, share, comment. This is a live show, people. You could talk to me. We could talk about this card for a few seconds, but I definitely want to get back up out of here since I had an error on my last time recording this show, and this one is kind of the replay of it. But not so much the replay, more of a condensed show. So that's the fun part about it. My money line in the subs only Discord at 2-2-1, and my Five Tastics money line went 3-1-1. Ultimately, on DK, you saw a lot of contest scoring. Pay line was 483. FanDuel was a little jacked up. There was a lot of knockouts. There was a lot of cartage on this card. And even Blake in the Fight Club of Pain goes, this card has been great. People are just getting smoked. When they get smoked, they get smoked. But Barber got the worst smoking of it all. But I got to bet that smoked. We'll talk about that. And then, of course, that was 593. So on the FanDuel side, I went 2-2. Of course, the one lineup, two of the lineups that scored cash was 653 and 675. I saw around 721 being top in the $3 max on FanDuel. So that's not bad. We were right there. Just a couple things didn't work out, and that happens. So on DraftKings, I went 1-2. Of course, I did have that hot lineup. I had that lineup that I was able to play. I, of course, used Gibson Jr., so I swayed. I didn't trust Chase Hooper, man. I really didn't trust him because he looks like a small little skinny, like college dude with his big bob hair. And I get it. He is a decent fighter, but he goes in there against these dudes that just actually just look physically stronger than him and wider than him, and he gets smoked. Can't take that power. And he had the reach advantage. It looked okay, but that didn't work out for him. So let's go over the DFS percentages. Gibson Jr., 10%. Sterling, 25%. Thank you. He was 100% of my lineups. O'Neal, 40%. Only rostered her in one lineup. Chiesa, 18%. Thank you. But he was the most expensive fighter. People were scared that old man wasn't going to get it done, and he did. So that was nice. Pyfer, 43% owned. Adesanya, 25% owned. Malik, 32% owned. Fortune, 29%. That is nice. When we talk UFC DFS, you're looking around 25 to 30% about your average. So when you're getting 20, you're getting a bargain. I'd say even 30 to 40 is like average because, again, we're only looking at so many fights. And it's only two people. There ain't a whole bunch of team players like other sports. So Barber was 15%. Bruno Brazil, 13%. That was a smoking. Yeah, she lost. She got 25 points. She was 3% owned, allowing me to pay up for everybody else. It was $9 on FanDuel. I'll take that hit any day. I punt catcher. I punt pitchers too. Grosso, 18%. Bam. That was nice for that lineup. Douglas, 35%. McKinney, 46%. And Thayanara, 22%. Overall, the betting and the DFS recap was nice. Let's go back through the three things that the Fight Club did that led to why Fight Theory means something in this sport and why UFC betting and DFS is different and unique. And that is why my next segment will be, of course, explaining why hedging and round robining is like setting up a tag team between the DFS and the betting side of UFC and why the UFC is the only sport to do it. We'll get to that real soon. But of course, we picked Mansour Abdul Malik, but we had like we said on Thursday on the Fight Club of Pain, decision no bet, probably the safest play for Belgaria. And I also said first and second round knockout plus 380. Also had the money line plus 100, knockout plus 280, knockout points plus 100, money line distance no plus 213. We returned all of that in a hedge. And because all of that was so inflated, I mean, we won more money than we would have won on the Abdul Malik side because we only had money line distance plus 142. No. And I felt that this fight was going to go over. So both were a positive. Knockout, I thought that all the power because Abdul Malik starts slow. He started slow and he got finished fast. And that's his weakness. That's his fault. Decision no bet, negative 154. Second, third round sub plus 1400. I did hit that. Knockout sub plus 155 and knockout for both fighters was negative 115 under 2.5 rounds. Negative 140 said hit that. This is why you hedge. We'll explain that in a few seconds. Macy Barber, picked Macy Barber, had all the same things. Money line distance, yes, 105. Knockout points, of course, negative 150 on the Barber side, that is. Points, 115. Knockout, plus 550. But the fact that the knockout for this fight was plus 500, I felt. Dan told me that there was no way Grosso was going to be able to knock out Barber once I told him these numbers because I said, Dan, with numbers like this, I have to will a knockout into existence. And I did. And like I said, unfortunately, Barber was on the shit end of the stick on that because she got lights out. And so the Grosso knockout, I had a second and third round knockout plus 4,000. I was on that knockout so bad, but I was so close. Knockout points plus 170. We had decision no bet plus 215. Money line distance, yes, was a plus 170, so we lost that. But under 2.5 rounds was also plus 280, had that. And knockout plus 2,200 people. Knockout plus 2,200. That was suggested on the Fight Club of Pain by me because I felt that Grosso boxing could take advantage of Barber's chaotic style. Go back and you check the tape for Thursday. You'll see that I explained this. And I was crazy, but it happened. And even though it was a crazy prediction, the plus 2,200 more than paid for everything else. So when we got to it, like I said last week, by the time we get to the main event, Adesanya versus Pyfer will have made all of her money, and that's because all the five-tastic picks and the parlay of pain ended with the Chiesa first and second round sub at plus 130. So, of course, the parlay of pain was decision no bet Simon plus 134, Sterling first second round win, negative 125, Bahamundes first second round win, plus 135. So close. So close. This was a plus 34-27, people. The Malik Phil fight, no distance for both fighters, negative 182. Combine that with Chiesa's sub first, second round, plus 130. 3-1-1 is why we did it. Even with the one loss, the 3 wins were positive. We were able to return a lot of money. So that right there set us up. And then we got the plus 2,200 heading into my out the door for the initial for the parlay of pain was about $9 after all the legs were settled, 26 legs being. And then, of course, if you had the 5 separate money lines that I included, that was 5 more. We're talking 31 straight bets. And it returned over $50. So you're looking at almost 5 times the amount, more than 4 times the amount of money won off of round robining and still getting a void and losing ones. That's why we round robin. That's what we're going to talk about real soon as well, too. So let's just get right into it. Let's talk about it. This is why you hedge and especially exploit it if you're a bettor using the UFC. The UFC is the only sport, I promise you, is the only sport you can hedge and hedge confidently in both DFS and betting. I've been preaching this for a long time that the round robin helps make money. This is, again, I went 6-6-1. My picks were crap, but what I was able to return was because of the round robin still being good. And this is why I explained to you, even when I went 1-4 last week and had a bad week, the DFS picked it up. And then the previous week, I went 4-1. You see that building the bank at Dr. Roto is something that we strive for constantly, that we try to teach to all of our subscribers. That's why you have to get into the subs only Discord so you can talk to people like myself and Danger and Fuego Steve and so many different experts and give you their ideals, knowledge. Right now, literally the Dynasty NFL chat is blowing up. Ed is killing it in there, the fantasy clown. So you need to get in there. You need to check out all of these lineups, because if I did this wrong, I wouldn't have been able to. Of course, like I said earlier, 2 FanDuel lineups scored great, more than scored. Then the top 20%, I was able to return more money than I lost all over DFS-wise. But it was on the betting side that I was able to, even with those voideds, even with a lot of these bets going 2-2, I was still able to return that money back, so I wasn't a full loss on the total investment, unless you just completely lose. But that is something I have not done. And that is something that when you have a service like Dr. Roto, that you feel confident in an expert like me, that we will not direct you down the wrong path. And that's why we're always the right here for all of your fantasy needs in the office at Dr. Roto. Yeah. Woo. All right. Hot stuff. And it was the first week that the Parlay of Pain actually had a motto, because the Fight Club of Pain's motto is we turn pain into profits. And we did that. We did that this week with a card that had a lot of overs. And when we have a lot of overs, the Fight Club of Pain always excels, even if my picks get up crap. And I had a lot of underdogs winning. Gibson, but I picked Hooper. But you got to have that hedge. And that's why you hedge. So every fight, what I do is I look at this. So I'll go, okay, let's look at the Fortune fight. Bam, knockout in points. But of course, I had a sub knockout on the Tiburon side. And that was crazy with that decision too, because that one almost got me, because they got that wrong and they had to bring him back in. They had to bring Fortune back in because he was mad. He was like, he knew that decision was crap. He had dominated. Yeah, he gassed at the end, but that's what happens. So let's flip back out, right? Bam. So when I'm talking about this and you see that, it's why I picked Macy Barber knockout in points, but why I also hedged myself on the Grasso side with the knockout being 2,200. I will take a knockout for 2,200 with anybody that if I feel you have a chance to knock the other person out, regardless of your fight history. Now you got a knockout, Grasso, right? So that's kind of thing. You got to be smart when you're betting. These books are meant to beat you and take your money. And we're not going to let you happen. We're a perfect tag team. And that's why I said earlier, DFS and betting is a perfect tag team. Because when DFS is hot, maybe your bets didn't work out. The DFS can prosper. You tread those wheels in the mud, like I always say, and you live to fight another week. But when you're able to get a good return on the DFS side and flip it and get those nice big hits, like the parlay of pain coming through, and then, of course, the plus 2,200 coming through. I mean, think if I'd have put that in a parlay. Whoo, we'd have been smoking. But that's why I had the knockout plus 500 for both fighters. Kind of just always hedge yourself. I've got this action, I've got that action, but there's a knockout for plus 500. So whoever goes down, I'm getting 5 times that amount. And like I said, I told you guys how to play that on the Fight Club of Pain last week, because we take that fight theory that Dan and I talk about and we put it together and we make it happen in the bets. We narrow it down and we say, play this. And I said, play that. And it happened. So that is why hedging yourself is perfect. I said, play first. I had a lot of knockout bets on the Pyfer side. Knockout points. I had knockout sub plus 145. Knockout was plus 300. I also got it for a plus 290 because I like to bet right before the fight. So I have that bet twice just for proof. That knockout first, second, third round plus 420. Every time a 420 pops, we say smoke that bet. And we smoked that bet. Plus 420. Hit that decision, no bet. Negative 210. Money lines, distance. Yes, we did lose that bet. It was a plus 732. Would have been a nice hedge. But the fact that we were able to hit plus 420 in the main event, we were able to hit the knockout plus 120. I said put 3 units on that, people. There was going to be a knockout in this fight, right? And then we had the knockout with Grasso. And right before that is when everything hits, just like I said. If it wasn't for the parlay of pain and everything the way that I kind of crafted at Dr. Roto, getting the Fight Club of Pain, giving you 3 fights, and then getting the 5 tactics picks, which is behind the paywall, gives you 8 out of the 12 fights for this card that you would have been confident going into. And that confidence would have translated into cash, even with the losses we took on the chin this week, people. That is why it is imperative that you hedge, and the UFC is the only sport you could do this. You can't just, they try to do it with, hey, this guy's going to score a touchdown. Saquon Barkley's going to score a touchdown, or Williams is going to score a touchdown. Negative 120, right? No, we got a knockout plus 500 for both fighters. Thank you, sportsbooks. And you can hedge perfectly. I thought this was going to happen. I had the numbers. And like I said, it's not a loss. You're playing both sides of the card. But in the end, you're either going to win a lot of money with your favorite, or the few bets that you have with the underdog is going to cover, hedge, and that is going to return that money. That's why it's important at Dr. Roto. That's what we teach at Dr. Roto, building your bankroll and making sure that you CYA. You're always covered. And that is the pure caliber, the ability of betting and expertise that you get. I know that doesn't make sense because I kind of lost myself there for a second, but what I'm trying to stress to all of you is that these are imperative. The UFC is the one sport you can do this perfectly at, and it can make you a lot of money. And if nobody out there is going to help you, you just need to come to Dr. Roto and we will help you out. All right. That's it. If you got any questions, hit us up, get on the YouTubes, ask us questions. This was a live show. You could have asked those questions right now. But this week on the Fight Club of Pain, Dan and I will be covering UFC Vegas 115 between Moicano and Duncan. Our boy Chris, the Problem Duncan's coming back. This dude's a cool dude. He's a gung-ho kind of fighter. Moicano's been on a slide. He's a kind of good fighter too, but this is a kind of opportunity that Duncan can seize and maybe jump into the ranks for himself. And it would be good to see him there. He may not be the best fighter, but the fact that he knows how to fight is why he gets the job done. And he's always a threat submission-wise. That's why you always got to have a submission. Again, I've picked against I picked against Chris Duncan in the past. But that fight against Jordan Vuciniewicz, I think it was, whatever it was, that allowed me, that submission was like plus 2,700. So that returned everything. And that is why I keep talking about hedging. And that's why. So so for all that information and all of the fight theory that leads to finishes, like the plus 2,200 this week, like Dan's plus 3,500 for King Green's second round knockout. Again, we never talk about our notes. Show came on. Dan had second round knockout plus 3,500. I had second, third round knockout plus 2,500. Great minds think alike. And that is what you get on the Fight Club of Pain live every single week. And I can't wait to get. I definitely want to thank Sean and Matt for coming through and taking care of the show and showing cool little graphics and popping up things so that we can make this show look a lot more crisp, fresh for this year, this 2026. And also, you have to make sure that you follow Dr. Roto on YouTube. We are going to make our YouTube brand so much bigger over the next few months that by the time football season comes, you're going to want to wish that you were following this, because all this information is free. With this free information, you take it, you win money, and then you go buy the subscription and you dominate all of your fantasy football, fantasy baseball leagues all across the board. That's what we do. You got to make sure that you follow, ask the questions. You don't always have to attend the live showing. Play this back, go into the comments on the audio plays. If you have a question, we will answer that. Hit us up on the X, our social medias, of course, at Heat Override, and of course, Dr. Roto. That's why we always say we have the right care for all of your fantasy needs. I hope everybody has a great time. Get over there, talk about it. Let's get ready for next week. The work week's here. We got one game for baseball tonight. Let's always remember to bring the pain. Ooh, yeah.
Thanks for stopping by the office. Get your fantasy prescription by subscribing to the channel and checking out drroto.com. Until the next visit, be well and take care.